Chapter 21. The last shall be first. In the 20th chapter of Matthew, we find the parable of the laborers. Here Jesus spoke of a householder who hired laborers for a penny a day, paying exactly the same amount to those who came at the 11th hour as they who toiled the entire day. Since such dealing appears to be unjust and inconsistent, let us look beneath the surface for the real meaning of this doctrine and find its underlying viewpoint. Who are the laborers? Who is the householder? And what does the penny represent? The laborers are those who call themselves man, mortals, or personalities, believing life to be separated into parts. This householder is the Lord's self as the whole. The penny signifies heaven, which being all there is of the reward, none may receive more, regardless of the length of time consumed in laboring for it. The 11th hour signifies the final step of awakening, which takes one out of the laboring class into that of the householder, out of division into oneness. So-called mortals, individuals, or human consciousness, aspiring for ways to achieve a more complete form of peace and satisfaction here on earth, endeavor to change the pictures of limitation, darkness, and bondage about them into better, brighter, and more satisfactory ones. Such labor is done by the sweat of the brow, or, with a more advanced and spiritually progressive outlook, by the effort of thought. Nevertheless, the point of view is the same. Certain work must be done by the individual. While the multitudes are engaged in this fashion, others dare to claim the same reward, yet use neither muscle nor thought to earn it. For they see that they and the Father are one. Then arise dissensions among the laborers. For why, they question, should anyone lay claim to security, peace, health, and the abundance of all good, without laboring with hands or minds to procure them? Paradoxically, we read that the late arrivals not only received the self-same reward, but were paid before those who had borne the burden of the day, and moreover, that Jesus imperiously decreed, "The last shall be first, and the first shall be last." The first are those who believe they are individuals, needing to earn, gain, or acquire the heavenly good. Those who have given up the belief that they are separate individuals to accept the indivisibility of the one represent the last. Thus shall these be first to come into the joys of the new age, now approaching. For renouncing the position of the laborer, they identify the self with the householder, the universal whole. Coming face to face with the great reality that as the self, one is the truth, and not a disciple, the whole and not an idea, the thinker and not the image. He disclaims all association with human footsteps, to be the way unto himself, the way of immortal and everlasting life, the way of almighty and omnipotent mind. Verily, the way of the Lord, or householder, in short, the way of the one, the whole. Reader, which will you be? Chapter 22. Enter thou. The parable of the talents, Matthew 25, carries a similar illuminative message. Again, we find the servants typifying those who, believing they are persons or individuals, strive to gain their separate good. Here, the Lord designates him who knows he is the whole, the one mind which is all. The talents, the new perceptions and inspirations continually appearing. A servant receives as many talents as his desire and acceptance thereof permit, according to his several ability. If one receives a new revelation, for instance, and immediately seeks to enlarge and dwell upon it, assuredly additional light and understanding, together with their attendant good, is given him. But if one is given the new idea and he heeds it not, allowing it no root within him, but instead buries it in the ground, losing sight of it altogether, he then is not only cut off from an additional blessings, but moreover begins to lose the little that he has. True, unto every one that hath genuine receptivity and unselfish love for God and all spiritual realities shall be given more understanding and greater wealth of all good things, and he shall have abundance. But from him that hath not made the great surrender of a selfhood apart from the one infinite whole, and is unwilling to take the progressive steps forward, shall be taken away even that little personal understanding and wealth which he believes he hath. Functioning as the one all-knowing mind and eliminating altogether the so-called individual thinking, we are now and here the one thinker and no other, and are literally the one consciousness and none else. Chapter 23. The Wedding Garment. In the 22nd chapter of Matthew, we find the stirring parable of the marriage of the king's son. Here, in inimitable metaphor, Jesus presents the following points of consideration: the gracious invitation to the marriage, the requisite of the wedding garment, the exactitude of life's demands. Come into the acceptance of the great whole imperatively calls the Spirit to us all. Marriage, therefore, is our full response to this call. The wedding garment is the love and purity we possess as the one. The same perversity which Jesus so stirringly and startlingly depicted in his parable prevails to this day. That is, many are unwilling to denounce individualism and wish to continue with their merchandise, the personal ideas and theories pertaining to their separate interpretations of being, thus reject life's progressive demands. The wedding is ready. The great answer is already at hand. But they which were bidden were not worthy. Many prefer to remain with their own personalities, ritualism, and attachments. Not only are they unworthy to receive the reward of progress, but often they look with disapproval upon those who leave the beaten path of the multitude to follow the emancipating light of the Christ. The more willing one is to surrender the notion of a becoming and accept the vision, I am, the sooner shall he participate in the marriage with his Lord self and put on the wedding garment. The common belief that we are to unfold into our heavenly state as a bud unfolds into a full bloom is absolutely at variance with Christ's teaching. Said he, "You are the light of the world. In you is the kingdom of heaven. Look and behold. Consider yourself man no longer, nor continue your search for the truth. You are the truth now, and never have been otherwise." An illuminative and helpful story is told about an animal which was educated as a sheep, though born a lion. Living with his foster mother, a sheep, he took upon himself her characteristics of timidity and gentleness, even bleating. One day this cub lamb wandered off near a deep forest. There before him stood the majestic form of a huge beast, which let forth a terrific roar. Instead of being frightened, something within the cub lamb stirred and wakened. Breathlessly he listened. Then spontaneously he answered back with the roar of a lion. Did this animal need to acquire the lion nature or to unfold into it, or put off the qualities of a sheep? No. He needed to be wedded to his true self and nature. Born a lion, nothing could make him a sheep. This story may well apply to us all. Though educated as man, the individual subjected to sickness, sin, and all sorts of limitations, all the while we have been life eternal, truth triumphant, and the forever I am. Practically all Jesus' parables contain the same significant lessons. Mainly, we are the one and not the many. We must give up separateness and individualism. We must accept wholeness and oneness. Those who will not yield to these requirements shall necessarily continue in limitation. Through the light of ontology, we can now grasp the great teaching of Jesus clearly and can see and understand that nothing but the mistaken acceptance of individualized consciousness has brought about a reverse situation where dishonesty, impurity, and unworthiness appear, and where limitation seems everywhere. To eliminate the mistaken belief in personality would simultaneously do away with discords of every name and nature. For no lack or inharmony exists in God, the All. As nothing could change the nature of the lion, nor cause him to be other than he really was, so nothing has actually changed us, nor caused us to be other than that which truly we are, but have not known. Listen earnestly and eagerly to hear the still echoing call of the way shower. I am the truth. Spontaneously, rapturously, may there burst from your heart the great answer. I am the truth. Then shall you be wedded to the whole and wear the wedding garment. Chapter 24. The bridegroom cometh. Behold, the bridegroom cometh. Go ye out to meet him. Matthew 25, verse 6. How shall I gain this spiritual inspiration so to leave all and follow the Christ? Go and buy for yourselves, is the answer to each, as given in the parable of the 10 virgins. The bridegroom typifies the self, with a capital S, as the whole, thus heaven. The virgins represent those who claim to be pure in heart and desirous of gaining the true understanding. The lamps present receptivity, the oil, the flow of divine inspiration. Now 5 of the virgins accepted the self as the one I am and kept in close touch with progress and revelation. The other 5 heard the message of oneness as only another theory, presenting to them a new road of travel, but gave no genuine attention to it, nor made any place for it to root in their heart. Soon they lost sight of it altogether. At midnight, the hour least expected, there was a cry made, Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. According to the parable, those who had accepted the message abideth in the one consciousness of indivisible wholeness, feeling no insecurity nor limitation of any kind. But the foolish, they who rejected the message and regarded themselves as so many separate identities, now felt in need of more light and its coexistent supply of good. Thus they had hastened to the wise, saying, Give us of your oil, for our lamps have gone out. Here, Jesus depicted the general tendency to this day, that is, to imagine one can borrow good, as though good could never be separated from life, the whole. What happened then? Did they who had given up the belief in separateness and division now lend their illumination to others? What a deep and pertinent question this is. Let us see how Jesus answered. The wise answered, saying, Not so, lest there be not enough for us and you, but go ye rather to them that sell, and buy for yourselves. Such a teaching as this would sound cold and selfish unless understood from the viewpoint of the Christ. Could anyone borrow from reality? Can the truth lend understanding to you or to me? Can the unlimited be separated or divided? The impossibility of it is surely apparent. None of us can give or lend truth to another, inasmuch as the truth is indivisible, and even now our very own. Regardless of what true ideas one would like to give to another, it could never satisfy. Only limitless abundance can ever completely satisfy anyone. So we find the wise telling the foolish, Buy for yourselves. All must go to the all. Here alone is the fount of abundance. But while the foolish went about individualistically, intent on borrowing or obtaining for their separate selves, lo, the bridegroom came, and they that were ready went in with him to the marriage, and the door was shut. The bridegroom, or perfect awareness of the universal self as God, the perfection of all, may come to our attention at any moment, accepting perfection to be one whole, impossible of separateness. Simultaneously, we close the door upon the materialistic viewpoint. To be sure, there may be those who still insist that we open the door to them and speak again from the old standpoint of personality and individualism. Then the Lord answers, "Verily I say unto you, I know you not." The perfect can know naught of imperfection. Once having found ourself to be life, truth, and love, which are infinite and universal, indivisible and at hand, let us watch that we abide herein. Chapter 25. God is all. I am the answer to every problem, the fulfillment of every desire. This is true and certain since our own being is God, and since our own being constitutes our security in all good. God is neither a personal nor an impersonal being separate or distinct from our self with a capital S, but the self of everyone. The knowledge of our oneness with this all-sufficient and all-sufficing God being constitutes our perfect and complete solution to problems of every kind, to every emergency, demand, or need. When we are fully wedded to our almighty omnipotent being, accepting ourselves to be the very truth instead of an aspiring student, the dynamic original instead of a lifeless reflection, omniscient mind instead of incompetent man, then we shall experience no sickness or limitation of any kind, for they are not in the house of the Lord. As our awareness becomes more and more clarified and transparent, and we sing and soar, we shall be the living proof of the great realism. God is all. Considering one infinite mind alone, it is easier for us to adopt the vision of immaculate and irresistible perfection as always present and intact in everyone. It seems natural for us to say that man sins, is sick, incapable, and utterly worthless. But raising our vision from man to mind, how much more natural to confess the impossibility of us as mind to see or feel other than the perfect continuous supply of good in everything and every way. We know that the one does not see evil or lack of any good, nor is there any circumstance, thought, or thing which can influence or persuade mind to do so. Mind is ever consciously aware of its irresistible and all harmonious action and expression, and it includes all being. Identified with the divine, everyone loves the eternal good, nor is anyone seeing or experiencing a lack of any kind. Nothing exists to oppose its harmonious action and expression in every direction. God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. 1 John 1, verse 5. Mind is the conceiver and the thing conceived, and it includes all ideas and identities. Admitting only the one thinker and thinking, we are bound to express the very life which mind is, that life of wholeness, harmony, and success, and live in the universe of joy, peace, and delight, the universe wherein there is no darkness at all. Wedded to the one and no other, we are able to transmit this glorious and emancipating message to receptive hearts everywhere. And when called upon to help, we should see mind, not man, mind, perfect in every thought and action, since there is no reality except that of harmony and perfection. We should perceive mind to include everyone, thus everyone to be this consciousness and no other. Truly, then, we are worshiping a God who, to us, is all. When we behold Jesus as the truth and life, instead of a particularly good man, naturally we shall discern that in order to be like him, we must be identically the same. In John's Gospel, the 14th chapter, we find the eternal promise of the Christ, the Comforter, the Spirit of truth. He dwelleth with you and shall be in you. This Comforter is the direct perception or spiritual realization that we are the truth. Then we know that we are not an image, a man, or a reflection, but pure consciousness, which is the I, or God. This Comforter is the very spirit of Jesus' teaching, which comes to you and to me, bringing us into the conscious awareness of the perfect self, or Father state, to be intact in us all, here and now. Lifting our vision above mortals and humanity, we simultaneously lift it above states and levels of consciousnesses, and admitting one state as the all and only. We see all as in and of perfection and none outside of it. We are the one mind beholding itself as the first and the last, the beginning and the end. Acknowledging the one consciousness to be perfect and to include all, we no longer deal with humans nor personalities, nor consider how to heal, educate, or regenerate them. If we are to love everyone, then it is imperative that we see them as they truly are, and in no other fashion. Any view contrary to this is a compromising one, and is beholding as through a glass darkly. In order to see face to face, we must turn from the double vision which permits of God and man, life and death, abundance and limitation, consciousness and mortal mind. Reader, are you willing now to forsake all thought and talk of planes, states, and realms in order that you may see and accept the one state only, the Father reality, present and intact, our very self and being? Verily, for us to exist at all, we must be and are the one life, the one thinker, the one mind as the whole. As such, we have inspiration, revelation, and true thinking. We know that the world within us is without evil of any kind. Listen closely. If God is there where you are, then all good is there where you are. Health, harmony, activity. If God is there where you are, then true and right thoughts are there where you are. Fearlessness, power, receptivity. If God is there where you are, then peace and understanding are there where you are. Happiness, blessedness, security. If God is there where you are, then indivisibility is there where you are. Oneness, allness, I amness. If God is there where you are, then nothing opposing him is there where you are. Nothing contrary to him is there where you are. Nothing unlike him is there where you are. Chapter 26, Viewpoint. Healing has nothing to do with the seeming material forms, nor with the one spiritual body. Nothing to do with physical symptoms, conditions, nor discords of any kind. It has to do only with one's viewpoint. Often it is as simple as for one to decide whether he possesses a material form which is discordant and so needs healing, or the spiritual body which is perfect and into which no discord can possibly come. Disowning all claim to a finite material form, and taking spontaneous possession of the spiritual body which is ours from everlasting to everlasting, we cannot fail to experience the glory and wholesomeness thereof. Claiming possession of the spiritual body which needs no healing since it is ever immaculate, perfect, and complete, we prove our self, with a capital S, to be the one being and no other. Verily, our body is beautiful as the morning star and light as the sun. However, just to believe it to be spiritual, perfect, and ever harmonious is not sufficient. We are to take possession of it as our very own. How? you may ask? Through love and devotion, like a burning flame. As today one claims allegiance to the United States with all the ardor, adoration, loyalty, and fervor of his being, in like manner are we to claim ourself as spirit, truth, and intelligence, and our body to be perfect, whole, and all harmonious. Forms are multiple and are claimed by those who call themselves persons or individuals. The body is one and belongs to all who will take possession of it as the body of perfection, the body of life, truth, and love. When you glimpse the real and true state of being, body, and universe, do not think that then you can afford to stand still and rest. No, this is no time for lethargy or mental laziness. You are to be the living flame, expressing more and more the divine ideas and activities inherent in your being, remembering that the body expresses you, the perfect life and being. An intellectual acceptance of this new idea without the spiritually joyous activity of abiding herein, worshiping, loving, adoring, and continually soaring to great heights of light, power, and action, will do but little for you, and mayhap even less. The growing tendency to do away with the idea of mental or metaphysical treatment, yet give nothing in its place, limits and jeopardizes one's light and spiritually progressive activity. Having come face to face with the Self, with a capital S, we have still to prove all things and hold fast. What will be of help to us in our disassociation with discords and limitations? The answer is our acceptance of and dependence upon the spiritual consciousness which we are. The consciousness which knows the self, universe, and body to be the spiritual perfect whole. In fact, our whole outlook must be spiritual. If heaven is at hand, then just where is it? Is it in the United States? In Europe? Jesus elucidated this viewpoint by saying, "The kingdom of God is within you." Now, how far away is you? Right at hand, are you not? So if you appear to be sojourning in the United States, then right where you are, lo, here is heaven. Or in Europe, lo, here is heaven. You can see heaven is in you. You need not go to it. Consciousness is life, is being, is body, is universe, is heaven. It is right at hand, within you. You. The more we can stand upon the true nature and state of our self, body, and universe, the more secure becomes our safety, peace, and prosperity. The recognition of our activities as spiritual and perfect and without limit of any kind at hand and within our consciousness aids in our emancipation from a spectral world called a human existence. Chapter 27. I am that I am. Make an altogether new place in your heart for the great answer. I am the truth, all-knowing. I am the way, all-sufficing. I am the life, immutable and immortal. I am the body, incorruptible and eternal. I am that I am. There is none else. Attempting to put a certain amount of air into an enclosure restricts its natural power and greatness. Exactly so with life and being. Any attempt we make to personalize or individualize infinite being, body, or universe is vanity. Verily, every man at his best state is altogether vanity. Reader, are you ready now to move from a far country to the Father's house? From division to wholeness? From individuality to infinite? From man to consciousness? Laborer to householder and servant to Lord of creation? Learn right now that never can you transpose a finite form into the spiritual body, nor convert a material world into the promised land. On the other hand, know that you have never been isolated from true being. inasmuch as heaven is our forever reality, and is in no way outside of us, for there is no outside at all. It is ever with us and at hand. This gives all the opportunity to live in it at any time and exactly where we are. If heaven were a place, there would never be sufficient room in it for all. But as it is our own being, we are at liberty to partake of all its fullness, without any limits of time, place, or space. Heaven is the spiritual state of recognition, in which we discern that since we are spirit, mind, we enfold every good and perfect thing, that the good alone is all, thus the gracious invitation extended everyone. Come, ye blessed, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. Since this kingdom of perfection is already prepared and self-existent, heirship to it rests with us and is our acceptance of it. For instance, you should determine whether you express a personal form which is physical and in need of healing, or the universal body of truth which is spiritual, perfect, and complete. Whether your world is an external earth endangered by invasion, war, crime, and death, or in need of rehabilitation and defense, or the inner realm of spirit, perfectly safe, sound, and secure. To elucidate further, first of all, recognize this supreme and paramount fact. Your self, body, and universe already exist for you, perfect and complete. Your acceptance of this sublime and unimpeachable realism should immediately interrupt your contemplation of mythical finite forms and conditions, and enable you to wholeheartedly accept the wonders and glories of all-inclusive being as the I am that I am. So long as your eyes are blinded to this perfect, complete self, body, and universe which exist for you from everlasting to everlasting, and continue looking as though they were not, so long shall you deprive yourself of the unlimited health, peace, harmony, and good which forever abide with you. Nearly all religious teachings of today demand that individualistically we become more spiritually minded and more active in the expression of purity, goodness, and love. Surely this ideal is progressive and far more enlightening than the old belief that people are the helpless victims of heredity, ignorance, circumstance, or sin. Nevertheless, such striving to be divine shall be transcended by recognition of the eternal fact that goodness, love, purity, and uprightness are ever innate and intact in us, the truth and the life. Human footsteps appear helpful in the assumed man position, but the hour strikes when the individualistic sense must be dispensed with altogether to make room for the sublime and unconditioned, absolute, which all are, but have not known. When I regarded myself as an individualized consciousness, I spoke thought and acted from this position. But when I received the revelation that I am the truth, that I and my Father are one, then I refused the individualistic viewpoint. As the Christ, or I am life, Jesus claimed all power in heaven and on earth, and classified himself with the Lord, the householder, the shepherd, the Father, the I am, never with man, laborer, servant. Because we are one with him, not individualistically, but as the same being, we are bound to come into this identical viewpoint and position. Then we shall prove that righteousness does not depend upon the transformation of ourselves as individuals, but is ever innate and intact in us, the one being. No method, repentance, system, nor science will ever accomplish that which is impossible with man. Ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. 2 Timothy 3, verse 7. Our acceptance of the truth as our own being will prove the single way to wholeness, harmony, and life eternal. Verily, as the One, we are eternal good, birthless, ageless, unimpeachable happiness, wholeness, harmony, including every good and perfect thing. Already and forever, the kingdom and king are one I am. Before Abraham was, I am. John 8, verse 58. In the twinkling of an eye, you may behold this fact to be so. No amount of labor, strife, or study can bring you this priceless boon, your completion and perfection as the I am that I am. Chapter 28, Our Creation. Jesus' declaration that the kingdom of God is within us and heaven at hand pertains to us as the one indivisible consciousness or creative mind, not as multiple individualities. This heavenly kingdom has nothing to do with worlds, times, places, circumstances, persons, or things. It has to do only with us as that mind to which all things are possible, and in which all creation begins. The simplicity, charm, and beauty of Jesus' teaching become more apparent to us with every opening of our vision, and happily we are to be the living proof and certainty of it. You may now be thinking, how can I follow him so as to pay my debts, bring about my success and prosperity, and live without a constant sense of limitation? The answer begins this way: seek ye first the kingdom of God. First of all, see that your consciousness is your kingdom and the creator of your unlimited abundance. Adopting the Christ viewpoint, you will see that here in consciousness all good is and abides. No longer look then to some outside power for it. Rather, be that consciousness and power which is and which creates all. Are not all generalities of debt involved altogether in the notion of personality and individuality? Most certainly they are. Surely none is found in the great universal consciousness which decrees, God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. Just as soon as you leave the mistaken position of man and that of an individualized consciousness and acclaim the self as Lord of creation, even as Jesus portrayed for our benefit, then shall you cancel your debts and liabilities. For as the self-revealing light, you will receive direct perception and full spiritual instruction. Accepting reality, you accept God, life, and consciousness as the whole, incapable of any individualization whatever. Therefore incapable of any limitations, debts, or liabilities of any kind. Moreover, here you see that you are one with God, the Creator. How important then to understand that only as we relinquish individualism can we be one with the divine. This new light exposes the absurdity of the theory that as individuals we are each a creator. There would then be many creators contending with one another. There is but one creator, even as there is but one mind and consciousness. Hence, the prerogative to create is ours only as the one indivisible whole. Proportionately as we accept our lordship, as Jesus exemplified, shall we be able to practice being as he did, and happily be the living proof that all things that the Father hath are mine. Chapter 29, The Lord Self. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. Psalm 121, verse 1. Today, as always, we are to look up and ascend high above the individualistic prodigal position. Eliminating this false viewpoint and practice, we see only infinite mind and its infinite perfection, infinite power, authority, and dominion. The changing of forms of government, the revolutionizing of a world of politics, religion, laws, and idealism, even though appearing helpful in a measure, will never be sufficient to bring about the millennial kingdom, the world of unlimited peace, harmony, and abundance. lifting our eyes from warfare with man, thought and thing, to that perfection which is ever fully established and at hand, and exercising our innate lordship. We are self-sustained and self-existent. According to the Scriptures, the mystical universe of love, peace, and blessedness is not to be gained through development, nor is it to be added to man's world as new cloth is placed onto an old garment. We are to let go the old theories entirely and place the new ideas into mind where they belong. Then both are preserved. Let us now turn our attention to some of the miracles of Jesus as recounted by Matthew. We find that early in his ministry, he rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. Matthew 8, verse 26. Yes, even the winds and the sea obeyed him because he knew and accepted himself as the very truth, the Lord of creation, possessing all power in heaven and on earth, proportionately as we come to see that we are the same truth and life. For there is but the one. Then we also shall utilize this power and authority of being. Such power must not be confounded, of course, with the right thinking of so-called individuals, but abides in us as the Lord Self. Later, we find Jesus feeding a multitude of 4,000 men beside women and children. Matthew 15, verse 38. Think of it. With only 7 loaves and a few little fishes to completely satisfy a famished multitude. Consciousness, of course, is the substance of all things, and Jesus relied upon this, his own consciousness, to produce for him and for them whatever was needed at the moment. As the Christ, he declared and proved, all things that the Father hath are mine, at all times and in all places. When we are able to do this and to exercise our power and dominion as he did, then shall we know for a certainty that nothing shall by any means harm you, and no evil shall come nigh thee. If you have not already proved this for yourself, then begin today to turn the Lord's self to supply you with every good thing. Our way-shower also created money when he needed it. He did not obtain it externally, but from his own being as the Lord of creation. As this being, we are privileged to do the same. The universal divine consciousness is able to bring into expression whatever is needed, that we may have security, peace, and unlimited prosperity. But we are to lay hold of this realism with our whole heart, and lovingly and trustingly depend upon its operation in our affairs, all of our affairs. In the name of our Lord Self, let us set to work to prove the actuality of the heavenly state. Chapter 30, the Judgment Day. In the 25th chapter of Matthew, we find an account of the Last Judgment. Many have believed this day to apply to some far in the future period where God, as a great personal judge or potentate, will sentence everyone, either to eternal happiness or everlasting doom. And before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats. Verily, the judgment day is right at hand. Jesus applied the term goats to the stubborn and self-willed who refuse to let go and give up their false sense of personalities and personal attachments in order to accept of their perfection, wholeness, harmony, and goodness as already finished and at hand. No amount of reason, prayer, system, study, thought, or science will be able to save the goat climbers unless they make the great surrender of an individual consciousness of their own. All efforts to change, correct, educate, or spiritualize them will never transform them into the sheep who have dispensed with all physical, mental, and spiritual efforts to do, to think, or make over, content just to be the one. Accepting their pristine purity, innocence, and goodness as the one indivisible selfhood at hand, they have renounced all others in order to have and to hold it. They who refuse to be that which everlastingly they are merely sentence themselves to outer darkness, where they experience limitation of all sorts until they are ready and willing to give up the personal for the one, the fraction for the whole, and a self-constituted independence for indivisible perfection. From this requisite of life, none are exempt. The book of life, the judge, the judgment day are not far off, but very close to us all. Nor can the Christ save those whose ears are dull of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, to the voice of progress and revelation. For it is written, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathered her chickens under her wings, and ye would not. Matthew 23, verse 37. The parable of the separation of the goats and the sheep is not mere idle words, so let the reader pause to consider just what it means to him. Remembering that the sheep enter the door, I am the one and the all, and the goats climb up some other way. Ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. Matthew 24, 6 through 13. Lovingly, patiently, fervently, Jesus reiterated there is but the one door into the sheepfold. But they persisted only the harder to cling to their personalities and to the many religions, systems, and methods of their day as byways to it. Now we more clearly see and better understand the reason Jesus alluded to himself as our shepherd, and why so often he is called the Lamb of God. Always he guides the sheep, the willing and ready ones, within reach of his voice. Lovingly, tenderly, wooingly, he bids them enter the door into the sheepfold, no longer delay. Confidently, stirringly, compellingly comes the voice of the beloved shepherd down through the ages. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. John 10th chapter. Then follows the great and glorious promise, and I give unto them eternal life, and they shall never perish, neither shall any man pluck them out of my hand. There can be no mistaking the imperial character and absoluteness of such words as these. He that climbeth up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber. Thus should one reach for that which he already is, and accept personalities and personal attachments as other ways whereby to attain or acquire heaven. He must ultimately sacrifice them in order to grasp the profound wealth of meaning in these simple words. I am the door. I am the door means I am heaven. For to understand heaven as your very being opens the gates of paradise to you. If you are not abiding in the awareness of your perfect self, your perfect body, and your perfect universe as the one eternal infinite, then you fail to discern and comprehend this vital fact as the great fundamental of the Christ, the rock upon which to stand, nor deviate therefrom. Recognition of the self-existent heaven is the I am door to the sheepfold. For God is heaven, and heaven is God. God is perfection, and perfection is God. Listen again and more closely to these majestically glorious words. I am the good shepherd, and know my sheep, and other sheep I have, which are not of this fold. And they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one fold and one shepherd. Let all of us who are ready and willing now worship here, in the sheepfold, where one mind, one body, and one universe constitute our infinitude of being. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. 2 Corinthians 3, verse 17. All that is required is spiritual revelation or illumination, which comes through spiritual readiness and a fasting from intellectualism, personalities, and incorrect teaching. And we shall see nothing to forgive or to be forgiven. There are no separate beings, animals, or living creatures of any kind. All life is one. At every point of being, life is free, flawless, and absolute. But this can be known and experienced only from the standpoint of self-illumination. Chapter 32. Divine Revelation. Never can truth be known except through divine revelation. It requires a receptive, honest heart, willing and ready to leave all for the Christ way. Self-revelation is indeed the truth which sets us free, even as promised, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth, direct divine illumination, shall make you free. Spiritual illumination or revelation is the fulfillment of all our desires and questionings. It comes to those whose hearts are open to fuller light and knowledge of the real, the perfect, and the true. It comes as immediate understanding and freedom. Such revelation is our identification with our perfect state of being, present and intact in the here and now. Revelation alone shall deliver us from the dream of materiality and attending forms of bondage, ignorance, and limitation. Here, in his own being as the truth and life, one shall find that fullness and fulfillment for which he has searched everywhere. Spiritual existence is the only one that we should believe in and accept, and spiritual body the only body or form. Never can the perfect spiritual existence be experienced by attempting to place the divine mind over or into a personal mentality, or everlasting life into a mortal human form. Receiving the truth of being through divine revelation, one learns that never has he been separated from the divine perfection, and that in his true state he, his body, and his experience are one. Permanent deliverance from impurities and imperfections shall follow as one lets go identification with any kind of a mind, body, or existence of his own personally, and accepts the one perfect consciousness in being, always pure and immutable, to include all there is of him, and he to be this and nothing else. If we would experience revelation or entrance into reality, then we must part with all that keeps us from it. The greater our love for and devotion to the perfect is already established, both in being and in manifestation, the more frequent such times in eternity. One can have as many changes in personal consciousness as he will, but none of them will bring him direct divine illumination, since truth is to be known through truth, and not through change of any kind. To look away from oneself as a man, a mind, or a body to one's perfection in, of, and as life itself is to get out of the mortal and mental into reality and truth. So long as one remains in the belief that he is a personal consciousness, and so must deal with life and things mentally, he is not seeing himself as he is in reality, where God is all there is. Nowhere else shall we ever find peace, rest, and happiness but in our confession. I can of mine own self do nothing. And in our recognition and acknowledgement, both the King and the kingdom are within me. I and my God are one. When we depart from physical and mental ways of healing bodies and minds, and behold ourselves as we are in the realm of the real, our need is blotted out, and the healing takes place, not because of any change, but because we have seen perfection to be the all and the only. Just as you are, you can come into the experience of your perfection if you will release yourself from any personal salvation through thing or thought to face heaven as a living reality within you now. Perfection, heaven, is not within you as a personal being. It is in God alone. God, meaning yourself as you are in the light of reality and truth. The whole creation is finished, complete, perfect, and in manifestation now in the sight of God. A perfect body forever belongs to you, free from age, disease, imperfection, death. Chapter 33. The Atonement. Atonement is oneness and allness. Herein we are redeemed from the dream of a material existence by functioning in the state of awareness as the one whole and all. Atonement is the bringing of everyone and everything into the clear perception of purity, perfection, and reality. Together with our infinite perfect creation, we are to live in the world of spirit, nor ever be completely satisfied and at peace until we do so. As exemplified by Jesus, the atonement presents the self as Savior and Redeemer, liberating itself and its world by enforcing its true spiritual awareness and the power thereof, bringing all thoughts, ideas, and things into the reality of oneness as allness, and allness as oneness. As the word is spoken not to heal nor to regenerate someone, but in confirmation and glorification of the self as all power in heaven and on earth, so atonement is not to banish or wipe out evil as though it were something, but is the justification of the self in its right to be a law unto itself. Verily, the almighty power. In our night dreams, our characters are wholly fictitious, totally void of life, truth, or reality. Not so with the so-called dream of a material existence wherein the characters appear as multiple personalities or human beings. These are not void of reality. For reverting to the true state of the self, we know all to be the self and no other. Talk to yourself as the self. Tell yourself, I am almighty power. I am sovereign authority. I am sublime mind. In my infinity, there is no illusion of any kind, no darkness, no dream. I am that I am. I am that perfection to which nothing can be added, nor anything taken away. I see not many, but everything to be the one, myself. I praise and glorify myself as infinite in being, encompassing infinite life and its infinite expression. I am aware of life at every point to be the self and no other. Life at every point to be perfection, harmony, peace. I love my infinite self as the whole. I redeem my world by seeing everything in it bright as the shining light, pure as the spotless Christ. Upon this rock I stand, nor shall I do otherwise. Upon this rock or understanding I establish the infinitude of being, inclusive of its identity everywhere, the one infinite whole, everywhere the same. Whereas before there appeared multiple personalities and their discordant conditions, now before me is the one spiritual selfhood and its perfect spiritual identities. Mind in its true state as the infinite, indivisible whole. Atonement, therefore, is mind embracing all as the one infinite selfhood. Mind seeing, thinking, feeling as the infinite perfect whole. Atonement is our relinquishment of all assumptive thinking, our return to the Father's house, the self remaining perfect mind forever. O thou great, eternal, ever-loving, never-changing love, thou art the infinite I, the one who is the whole, the one in whom there is no personality, nor individualism whatsoever. Atonement is the direct perception of this infallible, undefiled, imperishable, and ever-existing love, which thinketh no evil, feeleth no evil, seeth no evil of any kind. To this love, which is all-embracing, all-encompassing, boundless and immeasurable, all is peace, all is harmony, all is purity and perfection always. Verily, I live in this love, I think in this love, I feel in this love, and all sense of individualism vanishes, submerged in this infinite sea of love, of heaven, of reality. Chapter 34. Preach the Gospel. Inasmuch as Christ commanded that we preach the gospel, exactly what did he expect us to preach? Naturally, to carry on his message. Concisely as follows: I am the light, ye are the light. I am not of this world, ye are not of this world. I and the Father are one. We are all one in the Father. The works that I do, ye shall do. Where I am, ye may be also. Did Jesus establish any form of church whatever? No. When questioned directly regarding his idea of worship, he replied, The hour cometh when ye shall neither in this mountain nor yet at Jerusalem worship the Father. The true worshippers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. John 4, verses 21 through 23. Church organizations, therefore, are not in accordance with the Christ message, but contrary to it. In fact, forms of any and every kind denote limitation, restriction, bondage. From such as these, Jesus came to save us. Suppose we consider such forms today, their doctrines and destiny. Do any of them proclaim the message of the Christ, which was and is, I am the way, the truth, and the life? Do any of them teach that being is one and not many? That we are God and not man? No. Based as they are upon a form of worship not inclusive of the whole Christ truth, they uphold individual leaderships and authorities, and diversified attention is given to multitudinous personal modes and methods. They who believe themselves to be human beings or individuals erect churches, attend and support them. But those of us who are willing to renounce such position find that we are that which we are seeking, namely God. Instead of the general present-day doctrines of individual regeneration, Christ taught that we are not individuals at all, but are one indivisible whole. Any attempt, therefore, to become that which we are already is futile. Churches, then, are not to be preserved nor perpetuated, since their foundation is based on a false premise. Furthermore, Jesus' prophetic words are now about to be fulfilled. Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. Matthew 24, verse 2. The upheaval apparent in the churches today signals their time is short because of their failure to recognize and expound the great truth of the gospel, that we are not human beings to be saved or perfected, nor individual identities to be reformed or spiritualized. Their doom is inevitable. Since the infinite perfect mind is not divisible, then it is not separated into different persons or individuals called men, women, and children who must perfect themselves in a material world. Outside or beyond the belief in fear, for instance, there is no fear, nor any suggestion of it. Such belief arises only because we do not take full possession of the mind which we are, and function therefrom. Inasmuch as there is no possibility of fear in mind, then by virtue of the fact that we are mind, we have no fear, nor could have. Furthermore, without a belief in sin, disease, and death, they could have no chimerical appearance. The single way to put a stop to them is for one to cease enacting the false believer. Until then, he will be unable to apprehend that there is no human mind, sleeper nor dreamer. So long as anyone personifies a sleeper or a false believer, he is liable to limitations and restrictions, and moreover unable to fully discern the great truth of being. Nor can he release himself from such bondage and ignorance until he unifies himself with the divine mind, which of necessity knows, I am God, and there is none else. Isaiah 45:22. Since our substance is spirit, not matter, it is impossible for anyone to be free permanently from imperfections and limitations until this paramount principle in fact be revealed to him. Inspiration and illumination take place when one is willing to leave the imperfect for the perfect, the intellect for the heart, and the ways and means of the personal for identification with that reality which is our all-inclusive and perfect selfhood. How simple and easy to see that spirit, soul cannot be sick or in pain, afflicted or disabled. Ever it is immune, changeless, and absolute. Identifying ourselves with soul instead of personal sense, we shall find the labor with thought to be over. For as light makes darkness impossible, in the same way the spiritual light that we are spirit shall prove our sufficiency indeed. Here in the glorious light of spirit, no effort, no struggle or mental work, nor even church attendance is required. One becomes the way unto himself. I, spiritual revelation, am the way, a perfection without work or effort, a revelation to you that you and I are one, and that there is none else. Identifying ourselves with spirit, soul, the reality of oneself, and neighbor alike, we shall be so happily concerned with truth and light that there will be no room for darkness in us. Nor is soul one thing and body another. When spiritually revealed, soul and body shall be found to be one entity, one being, always in a state of self-perfection. Chapter 35. Heal the Sick. Inasmuch as the gospel is now preached from the premise that we are humanity and not spirit, imperfection and not perfection, the many and not the one, how then can it ever be expected to rid the world of sin, sickness, and death? As man, we are inevitably subject to vacillation, illusion, and errors of every kind. Therefore, as man, we can never free ourselves from them. Not until we waken to our real entity and function in our true nature shall human experience cease. The true viewpoint corrects the false, which, being corrected, disappears. Think of the vast amount of time, labor, and effort now given toward the destruction of sickness, sin, lack, and limitations everywhere, instead of giving all attention to the self with a capital S, in which they do not exist. As man, you will never have surcease from evil, but tracing your origin back to God, the I Am, will obliterate the man position entirely. The attempt to bring about improvements or healings in individual minds or bodies has proved a great benefit to mankind everywhere. Nevertheless, the real need is to ascend to the spiritual state where no healing is required. Definitely, the human viewpoint must be changed for the divine. Then the cause of all discord will be removed. No war could ever exist of itself, no sickness, sin, or death appear, but for the untruth that we are man instead of God. Lo, to be spirit, to be mind, to be life eternal is the only perfect and universal remedy. The statement, I am God, and besides me there is none else, has, as it were, two sides to it, both conveying the exact same meaning. That is, 1, I am God, and 2, there is none else. In seeing that God, the self, or I am, is all perfection, all harmony, and all completeness, necessarily this view includes the vision and knowledge that there is none else. Likewise, in viewing any apparent discords or limitations, we come to understand their nothingness on the basis that the self, the I am life, and the intelligence is all there is. Comprehending the fullness of this statement, we, the self, must then prove all things. Many would like to have explained to them why war, sickness, and limitations of all kinds appear in the world, and still it be true that God fills all space. This is absolutely impossible of comprehension or elucidation without the superlative knowledge that God, the I am that I am, is one whole, including infinite identity. Generic man, so styled, alone is responsible for every war, sickness, sin, poverty, and limitation appearing today. He alone brings them into a chimerical existence, names the forms they present, sustains and supports them. Not until he wakens as it from death to life, even as did the prodigal, will he ever understand their total inexistence and be free. How is he the cause of war or sickness? He thinks he is man, a person or individual, and not the way, the truth, and the life, the self, ever perfect and immaculate. Because of this improper idea of himself and of all else, he becomes, as it were, another being called man, whose intelligence is limited and incomplete, whose life is mutable and insecure, whose body is material and mortal, whose world is finite and impermanent. Functioning in a perverse and fabulous position, his thoughts are imperfect and illogical, inefficient and incorrect, confused and deranged. Thus, they result in mythical forms of wars and of discord of every sort, kind, and nature. The formations of his thoughts truly represent his assumptive departure from the real state. For instance, many of the things which he invents, instead of proving an eternal blessing to him, often in the end turn upon and destroy him. None of his inventions ever reach perfection, but always lack it. Hence, the continual discard of his own handiwork for that which will completely satisfy. Never shall he produce it in a world of his own making. Never shall he achieve permanent success, invulnerable security, or impeccable health and wholeness, whilst to himself he remains a limited human being or a separate individual identity. Disowning his real entity as the almighty creative mind, with its unlimited power to create everything perfect and good, he becomes, to his false belief, a weak, sinful mortal, ever seeking that perfection which in his true selfhood always at hand and within him, yet ever finding uncertainties, wars, tribulations, death. Not until he rises to accept his true state, the free and unlimited whole, shall he ever experience that which he seeks, namely heaven. For heaven and the self are one. The great verity eternally remains. Infinite ego and infinite identity are one indivisible whole, perfect, absolute, complete. Never have I been man, neither a material nor a spiritual one. Never am I subject to limitations of any kind. Now and always I and myself are one and identical. Waken, be born again, arise, come forth. What else is there to do? What else is there to be said? No other directions would be of any real value to one in a far country. Chapter 36. Cast out devils. The command, cast out devils, may now be put into practice, for now we can execute it with spiritual vision and divine authority. The devils are the generic false beliefs which have continued since the beginning of time, of which individualism is foremost. Christ taught that all reality is one, without parts or differences. Hence, the irreconcilableness of ourself with the human mind or individuality. Conversely, generic man sets forth the doctrine of apotheosis, the deification of a human mind. To disclaim any allegiance to personalities in human doctrines brings one face to face with the flaming illumination and conviction that there is no other but the universal self. This one demands our full attention. Indeed, we need to clear out our vision until nothing is left before it but the perfect self and its perfect expression. On the other hand, or from the viewpoint of seeing there is nothing else, it is now easy to understand that the discordant forms called disease, poverty, or inharmony of any kind have no God in them. Hence, they have no life in them, no action nor power. But what originates their appearance? It can be traced directly to erring thinking and feeling, for this is it in form. This thinking, however, is altogether fabulous, since founded upon the mistaken assumption that there is a mind or consciousness other than the one which is God, and that such evil thoughts have power. The great realism remains intact. The only mind or consciousness we have is that which is a God. Hence, there can be and is no discordant form, no erring thinking, no other mind, life, or being. By virtue of the fact that God is all and there are no other personal thinkers, then all results attributed to them are mythical and spectral, void of existence. Consider the prevalent plague of Japanese beetles. Let us see in such particular instance what must be cast out. Do they express or represent life? Are they one with that life which is God, the whole? No. To be sure, they fly about, they have pretty colors and apparently the same life as us. But just what do they represent? They image the thoughts, actions, and feelings of nations and peoples at war with one another. Herein is fulfilled the prophecy of Jesus when he said, "For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines, and pestilences, and earthquakes in diverse places." To claim that God life in any way includes a form of life which is a pest is to misinterpret existence. Moreover, instead of giving such insects the same life that we are to cast out the form of life which they seem to have, and disclaim any reality to it, taking away their semblance of life by understanding that they image ignorance, disobedience, darkness, and deception, which have no life or reality in them. They fade into nothingness. Practicing this viewpoint, the author has recently seen such a demonstration take place. The beetles, which were attacking trees in the garden, were found thereupon lifeless. A slight touch of the branch, and they fell from the leaves onto the ground, dust to dust. Jeremiah proclaimed, "Every founder is confounded by the graven image, for his molten image is falsehood, and there is no breath in them." Ezekiel had a similar vision when he wrote, "Cast away from you all your transgressions whereby you have transgressed, and make you a new heart and a new spirit. For why will ye die, O house of Israel? They made the images of their abominations and of their detestable things therein." A plague or pestilence portrays avarice, destruction, warfare, strife, hate, greed, all based upon the root error that mind can be multiple, that life can be separated into human beings who can be at war with one another. Imprisoned in a personal mind or human intellect, one toils with sweat and tears. He walks in darkness, sleeps in darkness, and brings forth in darkness. This is the far country in which, in belief, he moves farther and farther from his real mind and true state of being, until finally the understanding comes to him that a personal mind or individual mentality is not to be transformed or trained in any way, but it is to be totally renounced. The Bible urges that we turn our hearts to the light, for the heart denotes the pure and spiritual longings, aspirations, and affections. Jesus sought the simple and pure in heart, whereunto to plant his teaching. He knew how hardly shall they who are rich in intellectuality enter into the kingdom of spirit. Established as the one, we assert our prerogative to be law unto ourself, that nothing be with us that is not wholesome, perfect, and pure. Rejoice not that the spirits are subject unto you, but rather rejoice because your names are written in heaven. Luke 10, verse 7. Thus spake Jesus to those whom he sent forth to preach and to heal. Rejoice not over demonstrations, but rejoice because you have found yourself and everyone to be the truth and the life. How we should rejoice and be glad. Jesus' treatment was administered as the spoken word, the word of power, the word of command. The self speaks to the self with power and authority, saying, "Come forth." Joyously, the self hears the self and responds. From out the depths of love divine, the words come forth and is fulfilled. It does not consider personalities, nor mental inhibitions, nor seek to change any so-called consciousness. The word springs from the self, and is the self, and is the authority thereof. The self is without limitation of any kind, without discrepancy or discrimination. It is power almighty. It sees itself as the unconditioned, the free and irresistible always. Know thyself. Love thyself. Who is there in all heaven and earth but thyself? Say not, I am, except in the name of the One, the Self who was and is and ever shall be, in whom there is no dream nor opposition of any kind. I am love. I am understanding. I am peace. I am abundance at every point alike. I am the demonstration of eternal good, always. Nothing can be added to me, nor taken from me. I and my creation are one, and fill immensity. And the Lord shall be king over all the earth. In that day shall there be one Lord, and his name one. Zechariah 14:9. The Lord is the infinite ego. His name is one, and his identity one. His harmony is one, his activity one. If God be for us, who can be against us? Romans 8:31. No one, no thing. There is none to oppose, none to be contrary, none to be separated. The divine consciousness reigns and is all in all. Knowing this ever-existent fact of being, the Christ confidently commanded, "Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature." Mark 16:15. Dear friends, let us obey our Redeemer. Let us preach the gospel of oneness and allness to everyone who will listen to it. Let us teach the message of ontology, indivisible perfection, completeness, I amness. Let us admonish all to stop thinking from the premise of man seeking for his good. Instead, take the rightful state of the self alive forevermore. Once accepting our true state, we are bound to come into increasingly fuller light and revelation until they shall see his face, and his name shall be in their foreheads, and there shall be no night there, and they need no candle, neither light of the sun. For the Lord God giveth them light, and they shall reign forever and ever. Revelation 22, verses 4 and 5. Chapter 37. Raise the Dead. Since I am the perfect self, then I must speak as the perfect self. I must see as the perfect self. I must hear as the perfect self, and no other. Speaking as the perfect self, the one ego, what shall I say? I shall say, I am perfect. I am complete. I am whole. I am creative. I am prosperous. I am successful. I am happy, fearless, glad. I am the truth, understanding, realization. I am life. I am light. I am love. Seeing as the infinite ego, the one mind, immaculate, what do I see? I see my identity as wholeness, harmony, immortality, beauty, loveliness, charm. I see joyous activities, spontaneous delights, limitless fullness everywhere. Hearing as the perfect one, the infinite ego, what is it that I hear? I hear the voice of myself saying, I am all, I am free, I am triumphant, I am supreme. Accepting infinite ego and its infinite identity as the one universal whole, we rise from death into the experience of life, immortal and eternal. For who are the dead? Those gone from our sight and hearing? No. The dead are they who stay in darkness, assuming identities of separate thinking of individuals. When Jesus said, I am the truth, all power is given unto me in heaven and on earth, he was speaking as the one ego, not as an individual thinker or human being. He refuted the spectrality called sin, disease, or death. With the might of the self as the truth and the light, he was the disproof thereof. At one time, while he was elucidating the subject of mental darkness, he said, But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. Matthew 13:25. So-called individual thinkers are liable to any distressing dreams or experiences as long as they continue with such assumption. The discerner, Paul, following up his viewpoint of the Christ, proclaimed, Awake, thou that sleepest, and arise from the dead, and Christ shall give thee light. Ephesians 5, verse 14. Inevitably, ontology must now come. It presents the great reality, infinite self or ego, one and indivisible, I and the self, one. How it enriches us, how it exalts us, how it glorifies us. Truly, we are filled to satiety. As one considers the purely spiritual to be distinct from both the physical and the mental, he begins to experience a peace unknown to him before. Moreover, he will soon be aware that troublesome thoughts, worries, and fears are things of the past. In conscious possession of divine light and revelation, he can walk in freedom, health, and happiness. Revelation is the voice of our own being, effortless as the shining sun, resplendent as imperishable glory. Then shall thy light break forth as the morning, and thy health shall spring forth speedily. Isaiah 58:8. It is in spiritual awakening that one shouts, Whereas I was blind, now I see. I was uncertain, but now I know. Lame, sick, sad, but now I can walk, and am whole and glad. Accepting oneself to be spirit instead of a personal consciousness, it is natural to come swiftly into the clear and vivid awareness that life is not a problem to be solved, but a great and glorious reality to be experienced. The end. This is the conclusion of The Great Answer, The Message of Ontology by Lillian DeWaters. This writing has been read by Laura Casal in the year 2013.
I hope you enjoy this spiritual audio. Like, share and subscribe for more.